So hello, everyone, and thank you for being with us. My name is Sandra Arevalo, and I'm the Community Health and Wellness Director at Montefiore Nyack Hospital. I'm also a registered dietitian nutritionist, and I'm very happy to be with you today. Today, I'm going to be your speaker. And today, we're going to be talking about best diets for women. And what I mean when we talk about best diets is because a lot of people have a lot of questions about diets, but because there are so many of them out there that sometimes we cannot keep up and we don't know what's really going on. So today is our day to try to simplify things a little and see, especially now that it's May and it's Women's Health Month, to see which diets are basically best for women. So as I was saying, we are going to go today about different diets, factors that influence body weight, what diet is best for women, and then specific dietary recommendations. This is what I found when I just put the word diet in Google. I found so many diets, books, information, and forget about social media. They have so many more probably there. It's crazy. And it's very hard to keep up with all of these, as I was saying before, and what they are and how they are and what's best for me or for my neighbor, or are they all the same or they aren't? You know, these are questions that we make ourselves all the time. So just to start, this is what we need to look for in a diet. First, is it easy to follow? Is adaptable to our own lifestyle, because we all have a different lifestyle. So it's important that we are able to adapt a diet to our own lifestyle. And that includes taste, or what foods we like, our budget, if the foods are available near me. Because if I pick a diet which foods I don't even know what they mean or they are, or I have never seen, it might be harder to follow. Another thing is food quality. We need to be mindful that there are some crazy diets out there that make you follow some very restrictive meal plans. So we need to always take things with a grain of salt and think, is this good for my health? And also, is there evidence of this diet being effective? I can come up with a diet and put it in social media and just start saying it's the best diet and have all my neighbors like my diet. That doesn't mean that this diet is really working or it's going to work for everybody. There needs to be some scientific evidence that these diets work. So based on that scientific evidence, actually, Harvard School of Public Health has published in their website a very nice analysis of different diets, and I'm going to base my presentation today on that. And if you want to access this whole article, I'm going to give you the reference at the end of this presentation. These are the diets that we're going to be talking about today. There are so many already, and I'm not even talking about a fifth of what's out there. There's so many more, but at least, you know, these are the ones that have some research behind it. In order to make things easier for you to understand a little bit, and even for me too, I decided to divide the diets based on what they are doing or what the goal of the diet is. So I'm going to take all those 10 diets that we're going to be talking about today, and I have divided them in what they do. Do they treat health conditions, or they're talking more about lifestyle changes? So based on that, I have seen that those that treat health conditions are the anti-inflammatory diet, DASH diet, gluten-free diet, ketogenic diet, or keto diet as is also known, Mediterranean diet, and MIND diet. Then the other ones that talk a little bit about lifestyle are clean eating diet, intermittent fasting diet, intuitive eating diet, and the paleo diet. So let's talk about those diets that improve health conditions. Let's see what they do and what they treat, first of all. So the anti-inflammatory diet, of course, you know, is geared towards treating inflammation. The DASH diet, which is dietary approach to stop hypertension, is aiming to stop, improve hypertension, but it also has been demonstrated by research that it can help with gout, cardiovascular disease, cholesterol, and diabetes. The gluten-free diet is a very popular diet, and now everywhere we see foods that say gluten-free, and it's a huge advertisement. Gluten-free diet actually targets celiac disease, which only like 2% of the population have. And some people that have non-celiac gluten sensitivity might feel better when they eat a gluten-free diet. Only 6% of the population have non-celiac gluten sensitivity. So again, gluten-free might not be for everyone. Although you might feel some GI comfort or some improvement of GI symptoms, because for some people, gluten can be inflammatory. But again, when it was created, it wasn't created for the population in general, only for people with celiac disease. The keto diet was created for children with epilepsy. Children who could not control epilepsy were put in keto diet in order to take away a little bit of the glucose or blood sugar, or sugar in the blood, yes, that feeds the brain. So because of the epilepsy was coming from the brain, people thought if I give less of the sugar and more of the protein and the fat, then probably it's going to help children with epilepsy. And it actually was the treatment for children with epilepsy for a long time. Now, is it for everybody? We'll find out. Now, cancer, diabetes, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and Alzheimer's have shown some improvement, and research says that there might be a slight improvement of these conditions when you follow a keto diet, but we're going to look into that. Now, the Mediterranean diet has been extensively researched. It is supposed to improve longevity, so people can live 6 to 7 years more when they are following a Mediterranean diet. It can also help with diabetes treatment, or also to delay the onset of diabetes. It can help with inflammation, and if you watch your portion sizes, it can help with weight loss as well. The MIND diet, it's a hybrid between the DASH diet and the Mediterranean diet. The MIND diet was created because there is research that demonstrates that MIND diet actually helps with dementia and cognitive decline. However, because MIND diet and is a hybrid between the Mediterranean diet and the DASH diet, it has also been demonstrated that it can help with heart health, diabetes, and cancer. So what do these diets preach? The anti-inflammatory diet is saying that you need to eat more fruits, vegetables, unsaturated fats, tea, coffee, herbs, spices, and oily fish, and less refined, and you need to eat less of the refined whole grains, red meats, sugar, and alcohol. The DASH diet promotes intake of fruits, vegetables, low-fat milk, whole grains, fish, poultry, beans, and nuts, and also foods rich in potassium, magnesium, calcium, protein, and fiber. And it asks that you eat less sodium or salt, any foods and drinks with sugar, red meat, saturated, and trans fat. If you're not sure what the difference is between the saturated and trans fats and unsaturated fats, let's put it in a simple way. Saturated fats and trans fats are bad fats. Unsaturated fats and monounsaturated fats, they're the good fats. So it's basically they're promoting less of the bad fats and more of the good fats. The gluten-free diet tells us to avoid all foods with gluten. Those are the foods that come from wheat, rye, barley, triticale, and sometimes oats if they are cross-contaminated with gluten. You can also find gluten in soy sauce, malt vinegar, and maltodextrins. So it requires a lot of label reading to make sure that none of these ingredients is in the food that we're gonna eat. The keto diet that has gained more popularity recently is more about the combination of the foods that we eat. So it's basically telling us to eat more fat, less carbs, and about the same protein as other diets. You see here that the recommendation for fat is 70 to 80% of the total calories that we need for the day. Usually in a diet, we say that we need to consume 25 to 30% of fat from the daily total calories, 55 to 60% of carbohydrates, and 10% of protein. So you see the shift here. It's like we're decreasing carbohydrates substantially and replacing them with fats. The Mediterranean diet has been researched extensively. It promotes more fruits, vegetables, beans, nuts, whole grains, fish, olive oil, and small amounts of low-fat dairy and red wine. You start seeing the pattern here, right? The fruits, the vegetables, the beans, nuts, fish, and also the new thing about the Mediterranean diet here is the amount of dairy and red wine. Now, just to remind everyone that the recommended intake of alcohol is 2 glasses for men and 1 glass for women. The MIND diet promotes higher intake of fruits, but mainly berries, vegetables, low-fat milk, whole grains, fish, poultry, beans, nuts, and olive oil, and less sugar, red meat, cheese, fried foods, and margarine. I just want to highlight something about the Mediterranean diet here because I really like this. And it's the fact that it is the only diet that highlights daily exercise and the beneficial social aspects of eating meals together. And when we look at the Mediterranean diet pyramid, you see at the bottom of the pyramid how it is asking you to play ball, to dance, to eat family meals, plenty of fruits and vegetables, then fish and seafood, then poultry and dairy, and then just the sparingly, right at the top is meats and sweets. The MIND diet is the only diet that it actually tells us how much we need to eat of every food. So for example, here, it tells us that we need to eat less than 5 servings a week of pastries and sweets, less than 4 servings a week of red meats, and that includes beef, pork, lamb, so it's not just cow's meat. Less than 1 serving of cheese and fried foods per week, and less than 1 tablespoon a day of butter, stick margarine. On the other side, it invites us to eat more than 3 servings of whole grains, more than 1 serving of vegetables, more than 6 servings of green leafy vegetables, more than 5 servings of nuts, 4 or more of beans, 2 or more of berries, 2 or more of poultry, and at least 1 time fish per week, and only use or mostly use olive oil. Now let's look at some of the cons of all these diets. So for the anti-inflammatory diet, research is very limited, so we cannot tell if the claims that it has are true or not. For the DASH diet, the diet suggests a specific number of servings per calories needed per day, and it goes from 1,600 all the way to 2,600 calories per day. So if you want to follow the DASH diet, you first need to find out how many calories you need per day and then create a meal plan that is going to adhere to those recommendations. So you might need a registered dietitian to help you set up your DASH diet. For the gluten-free diet, the research doesn't support any of the claims that it has for weight loss. There are also claims for increased energy, improved digestion, and even clearer skin. But again, the research doesn't support it. Now, the fact that the gluten-free diet is taking away some food groups, it might also promote deficiencies in vitamins like thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, and folate, and it might end up causing some weight gain because of the restriction in the diet. There is some thought that it might also increase the risk of heart disease, inflammatory bowel disease, colorectal cancer due to the lack of fiber in the diet, and irritable bowel syndrome. So we need to be careful with the gluten-free diet. For the keto diet, again, the claims are not validated by research, and there is increased risk of kidney stones, osteoporosis, and blood levels of uric acid. That is the one that causes gout. And also possible nutrient deficiencies due to exclusion of whole food groups. The Mediterranean diet, the only con is that it needs to be used in conjunction with calorie restriction for weight loss. And the MIND diet is similar to the DASH diet in the sense that people need to create their own meal plans and recipes. So you might need from a registered dietitian to help you with these. And it might also be a little bit hard for people who don't know how to cook. I just want to talk a little bit more about the keto diet and why we are a little concerned about so many people following keto. So carbohydrate intake is the main source of energy for our brain. When we don't eat enough carbohydrates, the blood sugar in the blood that is produced by those carbohydrates actually goes down, and so does insulin. That is the hormone that helps to metabolize those blood sugars into energy. Because there is not enough sugar in the blood, then the body has to look for energy from somewhere else. So it starts taking the fat and converting the fat into energy. And yes, that's probably what we want. We want to burn that fat down, of course. But now the problem is that when the body does this, the liver breaks down fat into energy and some bilateral bodies that are called ketones. Those ketones are released into the bloodstream, and because our brain needs the glucose to make energy, and now it's no glucose there, then the ketones go to our brain for energy. That's the problem, and that's called ketosis, and it's life-threatening. So we have to be very careful as to how much we reduce the amount of carbohydrates in our diet. Now let's learn a little bit more about those diets that promote lifestyle changes. So there are not so many claims about how good they are for our health or treat conditions, but they actually give us more of a guideline on how to eat healthier. So let's see what they recommend. The clean eating diet recommends more foods that are close to their natural state as possible, maybe even organic, not processed, without any additives or preservatives, as raw as it can be. The paleo diet is very similar on that, but it also gives us recommendations as to what foods to eat or which foods to eat. So it recommends more lean meats, fish, fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. And overall, this diet is high in protein because it promotes more meats, but it's also moderate in fats, low to moderate in carbohydrates, high in fiber, and low in sodium and refined sugars. Intuitive eating is more of a thought and an idea than a diet in itself. It's learning to eat when you're hungry and stopping when you're full. Intermittent fasting is a diet regimen that cycles between brief periods of fasting with either no food or significant calorie reduction. It can be all the way to like 400 to 600 calories per day, when we usually need, 1,800 to 2,200, and then followed by periods of unrestricted eating. So it's basically like you are starving for some time, and then you can eat everything you want for the other period of time. So what are some of the cons of these diets? With the clean eating diet, it is associated with orthorexia nervosa. We say that orthorexia nervosa, and you probably have heard of bulimia and anorexia. It's something similar to that. So in clean eating diet, what happens is that people become so obsessed as to, is this really raw? Is this really pure? How many ingredients does it have? I have to read the food label. I need to know where the food came from and all of that. If you're spending more than 3 hours a day thinking if your food is clean enough, then you might lead in your way to orthorexia nervosa, and it's good to talk to your doctor or registered dietitian about this. Another con of the clean eating diet is that if I'm not following a clean diet, some people say, then am I following a dirty diet? So they're not very comfortable with the term, because nobody's really eating dirty foods, right? So we all eat clean. It's just that the term can be a little offensive for some people. With paleo diet, several studies have shown that a high intake of red meat is linked to a higher risk of death, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes. Intuitive eating, the problem with that is that, okay, how do I know when I'm full? How do I know when I'm hungry? Unfortunately, in our society, physical hunger is not the only reason we eat. We eat because we're out with friends, or because we're watching a movie, or because I am at a party. Not necessarily do I need to be hungry to eat. So it might be a little hard for people to follow intuitive eating unless you are very mindful of how your body works and you learn to recognize the signs of hunger in society again. Intermittent fasting shows some benefits of the calorie restriction in animal studies for weight loss, but however, these studies have not been able to replicate the same results in humans. So I just want to point out a few things here. Intermittent fasting is not, and I repeat, is not for people with diabetes, eating disorders, people who use medications that require food intake, active growth stage, like in adolescents, for example, they shouldn't be following intermittent fasting, or if you're pregnant or breastfeeding. This is a little bit of how intermittent fasting works. And I'm putting this here because I know we get a lot of questions about this. Like, okay, what's the best way for me to do intermittent fasting? So there are 3 different ways, right? One is time-restricted feeding, alternate day fasting, or whole day fasting. So with time-restricted feeding, meals are eating, let's say, from 8 to 3 p.m., 8 in the morning to 3 p.m. And then after that, I'm not gonna eat anything else. So I just have my meals between a period of time during the day, and that's it. In alternate day fasting, then what you do is that you have days that you're restricted. So let's say, for example, Mondays, Wednesday, and Fridays, you don't eat that much. But then Tuesday, Thursdays, and the weekends, you eat everything that you want. For the whole day fasting, then you do 1 or 2 days per week of complete fasting, and then no food restriction on other days. So if you see alternate day fasting is one day yes, one day no, one day yes, one day no. But whole day fasting is like you're fasting for 1 or 2 days, then you eat, then 1 or 2 days, then you eat. So there are different ways of doing it, and it really depends on how you feel better and if you can do it. Like, for example, I cannot do any fasting. My sugars might drop, and that's the reason why intermittent fasting is not for some people, because if you cannot fast, if you have issues with your blood sugars, high blood pressure, or gastritis or ulcers, these are all restrictions that it's not good if you're doing the intermittent fasting diet. So with all of that, which diet really works best? And you see some even more here: Jenny Craig, South Beach, Weight Watchers, Zone Diet, Whole 30. So it's so many. So which one is the best for me? And I have to say, as women, look here, not only we go through stages in life, from little girls, babies, to seniors, but we also come in many different cultures. We all like different foods. Some of us like to cook, some of us don't like to cook, or we go to a supermarket, we prefer canned fruits and vegetables. It doesn't matter. We are all different, as we are all different in shapes and sizes, and we can be tall or smaller or petite or large or extra large. It doesn't matter. We are all different. So there are different factors that influence body weight, and we have to have that in mind, that there is no diet that is going to fit us all, because there are so many factors out there that, depending on our culture, our height, our weight, our activity, our age, our food preferences, everything is going to have an influence on our weight. So there are many different factors that affect it. And here you see how weight actually moves. And this is actually monthly. And you see it's never stable. And I can tell you, this is actually one sample of my weight that I track. And you see how it just goes up and down, up and down. And for women, it's all in cycles, right? And that's why we get our periods and all of that, because everything happens in cycles. So we go up in weight and we lose weight and we go up a little. Then so sometimes it's so frustrating, because it's like, no matter what we do, that weight never seems to be stable. And that's normal. That happens to everybody. This is why. There are some prenatal factors that show that, for example, if our moms were hungry or they had some malnutrition while we were in their belly, then we might be prone to be more obese in the future after we're born. Why? Because we tend to accumulate calories and fat. It's just the nature of our body. Then there is a period in our life that is called the adiposity rebound. Children experience this rebound, pretty much between 7 and 9 years of age. And what this is about is that our children kind of like plumb up a little bit and they start gaining weight. And then all of a sudden, they grow taller and they lose all the weight. They get skinny again, right? If that happens to children at an earlier age, let's say 5, 6, 7 years old, then there is a 3 to 6-fold higher risk that they're going to be obese or overweight later in life. Also, 70% of the adult obesity begins in childhood and stays during adolescence and adulthood. And in adulthood, as women, the more children we have, the more weight we gain with each pregnancy. We tend to retain all that weight after we have our babies. It's very hard to lose that weight. Then there are also genetic determinants, right? Like, for example, the general consensus is that genetic factors account for about 30 to 50% of the variance in the occurrence of obesity. So it has to be with our genetics. If our parents are obese, we might have inherited that obese gene, or if there are some other predispositions to be a little larger in our family, for example, if they are 6'2" and 250 pounds, most of them in our family, then I have that genetic predisposition to look like that as well. Then another factor is age. So as age increases, so does the body fat storage. Our lean muscle mass depletes, and so do our bones. There are differences also in body fat and also resting energy expenditure. This is the calories that we actually burn when we're just sitting down and sleeping. And those differences are based on race and ethnicity. So for example, it's believed that people from Asia, they burn more calories than people that are Black or African American. So if an Asian, a Latino, and an African American, we're gonna walk one block, let's say, there is differences, even if they are going at the same pace, same weather, same everything, exact everything. The energy that each one of them burn during that walk might be different just based on race and ethnicity. And then of course there is physical activity, and some of us are more physically active than others, and that also has a lot to do with our body composition. These are just some other factors. That food definitely has a lot to do with that, but so does the environment. So for example, if you smoke, you tend to lose weight. If you drink alcohol, you tend to gain weight. If you're taking medications, some medications help you lose weight, some medications make you gain weight, so you have to be aware of that as well. And then some social factors, like we've said, it could be the culture, for example, or the socioeconomic status. Some people with higher socioeconomic status eat more just because they can afford more food. But then are also some people that have lower socioeconomic status that cannot afford, meal plans, like the meal plans that we are talking about here. And for that reason, they might gain weight just because they are consuming I don't want to say the wrong foods, but the not recommended foods. So my plate, this graph right here, gives us an overall recommendation of how we need to eat. And this is based on all these diets that I've been describing. So it could be fruits and vegetables and grains and protein, but the amount of the foods in this plate also matters. So if you have a plate and you divide that plate in half, you need to fill out half of your plate with fruits and vegetables. This is to meet the recommended dietary intake for fruits and vegetables from all the diets that we've been discussing. Then the other half of the plate, you're gonna divide and fill with grains, and especially whole grains, and lean proteins. So lean meats, if you're gonna eat chicken or fish, you remove the skin. And for grains, it's preferable to eat whole grains such as whole wheat bread, whole wheat pasta, brown rice, and then all the different beans as well that you can use as protein, right? Like beans, lentils, chickpeas, etc. So the key is really to learn to select the best of each group. So for example, with the fruits and vegetables group, avocados, apples, oranges, bananas, and everything that has a very bright color is what's best for you because it has the most nutrients. Fruits and vegetables are okay to eat because they preserve most of the nutrients. Canned vegetables are a good option if you're on a budget. The only suggestion is that you choose the canned goods that are low in sodium or without salt added. If you cannot find them in the supermarket, then I have a solution for you. Just rinse them very well and take away some of that salt. And of course, never drink that juice that in which they come. Then also, if you're gonna drink some sort of vegetable juice, make sure that it is low sodium. For protein foods, it's best to eat, seafood, skinless, poultry, or lean meats. And how do you know that they are lean? Like if you look at this steak here, You see all these white strips? That's the fat. So you want to trim all of that off to make sure that you're not eating any fat from the meat. Then you can also eat fish, shellfish, and please don't forget that nuts, seeds, and beans make excellent protein foods. And so do eggs and some dairy. For breads, cereals, and grains, of course, we want to promote that you eat all whole grains, like I was saying, the brown rice or wild rice, the barley, the whole grain pasta, and try to choose cereals that don't have a lot of sugar, like, for example, oatmeal or the shredded wheat, or mix those that have less sugar with the ones that you like, just to reduce a little bit on the sugar intake. We need to eat some dairy, especially women. We need to eat dairy. Why? Because as we age, we lose some of our bone mass. So we need to be replenishing that calcium that builds our bones. But it's important to know that we need to choose fat-free or low-fat dairy products. So if you're going to look for milk, choose 1 or 2%. If you're going to look for cheese, then you have to choose the low-fat cheese, etc. Also, if you prefer not to eat any dairy, but you're rather a vegan or a vegetarian, then make sure that, for example, if you choose soy milk, it comes with added calcium, vitamin A, and vitamin D. If you prefer other milk, like almond milk, same thing. Just make sure that it has added vitamins. There are some specific nutritional needs for every stage of life. So we have talked so far about some general recommendations. Everybody needs to eat like this: half a plate of fruits and vegetables, protein, grains on the other side. Portion size vary, and it depends on what stage of life we are. But here I'm going to give you a very quick and easy trick to measure your portion sizes. Yes, use your hands. So for example, for carbohydrates, your portion size is the size of your fist. For proteins, is the size of the palm of your hand. And when you're deciding how many fruits and vegetables to eat, you can eat 2 full hands of fruits and vegetables. Now, when we talk about specific nutritional needs, they change with age. So for girls in childhood and early teens, you need to eat 3 servings or more a day of dairy in order to have the calcium that you need to grow your bones. Now, don't forget that you also need vitamin D that you get from the sun. So you need some sort of sun, not too much, 15 minutes a day, more than enough, to help with the absorption of calcium into your bones. But then we also need iron, especially the needs increase from 8 to 18 milligrams from childhood to adolescence. Some of the foods rich in iron are red meats, but also lots of beans and legumes. Then for women in childbearing years, there are specifically some vitamins that are going to help, especially if we want to have a baby, to make sure that not only we are healthy, but our baby is healthy. And they are folic acid, vitamin B12, choline, and omega-3s. They all help to prevent neural tube defects or defects of the healthy nervous system. Then for women in the senior years, I have to add that exercise is crucial to avoid muscle mass loss. Not only we lose bone mass, but we also start losing muscle. And the more muscle and bone we lose, the more fat we gain. So it's very important that women in the senior years start exercising a little bit. And I'm not talking about a lot. If you take a walk of 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week, that's enough. And it's probably a good idea to do that with your neighbor. That way, you can talk and have a good time while you're doing a little bit of exercise. But back to the nutrients, we need calcium again to avoid bone loss. And with that vitamin D that we get from the sun for absorption. Now, the absorption of vitamin B12 starts to decline. So we need to make sure that we eat the the meats and the legumes and the beans. And another thing is that as year passes by, we lose our sign of thirst. So we stop feeling thirsty. So we think that we don't need liquids, but we actually do, because our kidneys become less efficient at removing toxins as we age. So we need to be constantly drinking water and liquids to help our kidneys remove those toxins. So even if you don't feel thirsty, you need to eat. So wrapping up, in conclusion, there is no diet that fits all of us, and especially if we are women. Why? Because we're too different and we all have different needs. So we need to focus rather on healthy eating and not so much on which diet is best for me. I'm eating healthy if I'm including foods from all the food groups. I'm making the healthiest choices from each food group. If I'm eating in moderation and measuring my portion sizes when I eat regular meals like breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then some snacks. And I mean snacks, meaning little things in between meals when I'm hungry. When I can keep a plan long term, because if there is a diet that promises you the world in 2 weeks, you already know that that diet is not something you're going to be able to stick to. And even if you lose the weight, you're going to gain the weight back. And also look for a meal plan that matches your budget, your lifestyle, and your health needs. This might be difficult for you to do because you're not really sure of what you should be eating at what time, or what menu to create, or how to create your menus, or how to match your budget. But there are registered dietitians near you that can help you. Here are the references that I have used to do this presentation. And now I'm going to open the podium to questions. Thank you so much for listening. And I see a question here. It says, a male cousin is eating meat only. How can I tactfully tell him this is not healthy? You know, it's interesting. I don't know if I said this when I was doing the presentation, but especially for the paleo diet, lots of men like following the paleo diet. I don't know if they feel more manly because they follow that, but paleo diet, that's why it promotes like a lot of red meat, and we know men like more red meat, and that might be one of the reasons why it's so popular among men. But it's very hard to tell people what to eat and what not to eat, especially giving unsolicited advice. Even myself, as a registered dietitian, you know, it's hard for me to talk to people. I prefer not to do it. But if I have to do it, then I will, rather than saying, don't eat this because it's bad for you, I will rather say, have you tried these other foods instead? Like, for example, you can bring up to your cousin that, you know, you started making the chicken this way or fish this other way, and it came out really, really good, and you would like to give him a sample, and maybe he likes it. And little by little, start changing the other person's food choices by offering new choices rather than just limiting the choices they're making at the moment. That was a good question. Thank you. Any other questions? So I'm just going to wait a few minutes to see if we have other questions, and, you know, take advantage, or let me know if you picked your favorite diet, or what did you think of this presentation, and what do you think about all these diets? Okay, so if there are no more questions, I'm gonna say goodbye, and hopefully we can meet next week. Let me see if I find the topic for next week. It's actually going to be autism. The topic is let's talk about autism, and we'll be learning what autism is, risk factors, common signs, and how autism can impact one's life and the life of their families. So I will meet you next week again for community chats at 12 p.m. on Thursday. Thank you so much. Bye.